traffic ticket, you said she was doing what?
45 and a 30.
All right, so if she going 45 and a 30, they pulled her over for a traffic ticket. How is it lawful for them to get the identification of the passenger, which they did not get, but said they identified him?
Andrew, please, please, no.
They not trying to let me get with the car myself, bro. I'm on the phone, obviously.
A car slows to the shoulder of a Maryland roadway. Blue lights flash. A citation is expected, nothing more. But within minutes, a routine traffic stop becomes something difficult to categorize, recorded not by official cameras alone, but by a phone held inside the vehicle. Words are exchanged, requests are made, lines are tested, and then the situation shifts. What unfolds next is captured in fragments: overlapping voices, sudden movement, unanswered questions. Viewers later see the same footage and reach entirely different conclusions, some immediate, some irreversible. At the center of it all is a man who was not driving, not suspected of the original violation, and not the focus of the stop, until he was. What happened that day would travel far beyond that roadside, igniting debates about rights, authority, and what the law allows versus what the public expects. But the full story doesn't begin or end with the video. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. In the late hours of an ordinary day in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, a vehicle was pulled over by police for speeding.
And from Maryland has filmed the dramatic moment when her partner was arrested and aggressively removed from a vehicle by police officers. Antoine Webbington was detained after his girlfriend Heather Janney was pulled over for allegedly speeding in Anne Arundel County. The arrest was captured on Miss Janney's TikTok, which shows Mr. Webbington refusing to show his ID and telling police officers that traffic tickets does not require him to do so. During the 3-minute-long video, it took 3 police officers working together to remove Mr. Webbington from his vehicle as he pleaded with them to allow himself to get out of the car. As he was dragged from the car, he managed to kiss.
The roadway was active but not congested, and conditions were unremarkable. The stop appeared routine by every measurable standard. The driver complied immediately, bringing the vehicle to a controlled stop along the shoulder. There was no report of erratic driving, no indication of impairment, and no immediate safety concern communicated by officers at the outset. At the time the stop began, the encounter reflected a familiar pattern repeated daily across the United States: a minor traffic violation, a brief exchange of documents, and an expected citation or warning. The driver remained cooperative. The vehicle's passenger was not suspected of any wrongdoing related to the stop. Nothing suggested that the interaction would extend beyond a few minutes. What distinguished this stop from countless others was not the violation itself, but the documentation of what followed. Multiple forms of recording captured the encounter, including police body-worn cameras and a phone recording initiated from inside the vehicle. Within hours, portions of this footage would circulate widely online, removing the encounter from its original context and placing it under public scrutiny. As the footage spread, the stop began to function as a case study. It raised questions about the scope of police authority, the rights of passengers during traffic stops, and the point at which escalation occurs. The central issue became less about speeding and more about how routine procedures can change course when authority is questioned. The passenger in the vehicle was Antoine Webbington, a private individual with limited publicly available biographical information prior to the incident. Records available to the public provide minimal detail regarding his early life, education, or long-term employment history. Before the stop, he was not a public figure, media personality, or known activist. At the time of the incident, Webbington was in a personal relationship with the driver of the vehicle. Beyond that relationship, little verified information about his daily life was publicly documented. This lack of background detail would later influence how the public interpreted the footage, as viewers attempted to fill informational gaps with assumptions. It is confirmed through official statements that Webbington had prior encounters with law enforcement before this stop. These encounters were not publicly detailed at the time the video surfaced, though their existence would later become relevant. Importantly, this information was not known to officers at the initial moments of the traffic stop, nor was it visible to viewers watching the video without additional context. The case highlights the difference between a private individual and a public figure. Webington did not choose public exposure, rather, it occurred as a result of recorded footage being disseminated widely. Once viral, his actions, words, and demeanor were analyzed extensively, often without reference to verified background information. The driver of the vehicle played a critical role in how the incident was documented and understood. She was in a personal relationship with the passenger and was the registered driver of the vehicle. The traffic stop was initiated due to her speed, not because of any observed behavior by the passenger. Her driving history was not cited as a factor beyond the immediate violation. Upon being stopped, she complied with officer requests, providing the necessary documentation. During the interaction, she began recording the encounter using her phone, positioning the camera toward the passenger side of the vehicle. This decision altered the trajectory of the incident's public interpretation. The phone recording served as the primary footage viewed by millions online. The angle, framing, and timing of the recording influenced how viewers perceived the exchange, particularly regarding tone and escalation. By recording, the driver assumed certain legal risks. While filming police in public is generally lawful, doing so during an active stop can introduce additional tension. Her narration during the recording also shaped how events were contextualized, adding commentary that did not appear in official police footage. The initial contact between police and the vehicle followed standard procedure. Officers approached, identified the reason for the stop, and requested documentation from the driver. Their tone at this stage was controlled and procedural. Body language suggested no immediate concern. The requests made to the driver were clear and limited to matters directly related to the traffic violation. However, officers also directed attention toward the passenger, asking him to provide identification. This request marked a shift in the interaction. While the driver continued to comply, the passenger questioned the necessity of providing identification. This distinction, between requests made of the driver and those made of the passenger, became the first point of tension. At the time, the exchange appeared verbal and contained, with no physical movement or raised voices evident in the earliest moments. The request for passenger identification introduced legal ambiguity. In many jurisdictions, passengers are not required to provide identification during routine traffic stops unless specific conditions are met. The passenger verbally challenged the request, asking for a legal basis. The exchange involved repeated requests from officers and repeated refusals from the passenger. The wording used by both parties mattered. Officers framed their statements as directives, while the passenger framed his responses as assertions of rights. This back and forth occurred without physical resistance. The refusal itself altered officer posture. While the passenger remained seated and did not attempt to exit or interfere, the verbal challenge to authority shifted the interaction from cooperative to confrontational. The challenge was verbal rather than physical, but it prompted a reassessment of control by officers. Officers issued commands for the passenger to exit the vehicle. These commands were repeated as the passenger hesitated and continued to question their legality. Seconds passed with overlapping speech, incomplete responses, and increasing urgency. From the officer's perspective, the refusal to exit constituted non-compliance. From the passenger's perspective, the command lacked lawful justification. This disconnect led to a breakdown in communication. At this point, officers justified physical removal based on failure to comply with a lawful order. The transition from verbal commands to physical action occurred rapidly, leaving little opportunity for de-escalation. The passenger was physically removed from the vehicle by officers. The extraction involved pulling him from the seat and onto the roadway. The force used was proportional to officer intent to gain control, though debate would later arise regarding necessity. Audio from the scene captured raised voices, commands, and moments of silence. Once removed, the passenger was restrained and placed under arrest. This moment marked the point at which the encounter became irreversible. Following the arrest, the scene stabilized. Traffic resumed, and officers completed roadside procedures. The original purpose of the stop had been fully displaced by the arrest itself. After the arrest, officers identified outstanding warrants associated with the passenger. These included a bench warrant and a parole-related warrant, according to police statements. The timing of this discovery was critical. The warrants were not known prior to the physical removal. Their discovery occurred after the arrest process had begun. This distinction became central to public debate, as some interpreted the warrants as justification for earlier actions. Legally, warrants validate continued detention, but do not retroactively justify the escalation that preceded their discovery. Public misunderstanding of this distinction contributed to polarized interpretations of the incident. The phone footage was uploaded to TikTok and rapidly shared across platforms. Headlines summarized the incident in brief, often omitting legal nuance. Raw footage was frequently viewed without full context. Media coverage emphasized themes of race, civil rights, and police authority. Some outlets omitted mention of the warrants, while others foregrounded them. This selective framing shaped public perception. As the video spread, the case entered a space where public opinion formed faster than official review. Virality reshaped the narrative, placing pressure on institutions and individuals alike, while due process continued outside public view. Following the widespread circulation of the video, the Anne Arundel County Police Department issued formal statements addressing the incident. These statements were released through press briefings and written communications, outlining the department's position and summarizing the sequence of events as understood from the officers' reports and body-worn camera footage. The department emphasized that the traffic stop originated from a speeding violation and that officers acted within their authority when issuing commands to the passenger. The statements clarified that officers requested identification from the passenger and later ordered him to exit the vehicle after what was described as non-compliance. The use of force was framed as a response to refusal to follow lawful orders. An internal review process was acknowledged. As with most officer-involved incidents that gain public attention, the department stated that supervisory personnel reviewed body camera footage, incident reports, and applicable policies. However, details regarding the scope, timeline, or findings of this review were limited. What the statements addressed directly were procedural justifications and the discovery of outstanding warrants after the arrest. What they did not address in detail were questions surrounding de-escalation, discretionary decision-making, or alternative actions that could have been taken prior to physical removal. The language used in official communications was deliberate and legally precise. Terms such as lawful order, resisted removal, and officer safety appeared frequently, serving both to explain actions and to limit liability. No disciplinary action against the officers was publicly announced, and no indication was given that policy violations had been found. The absence of disciplinary measures became, in itself, part of the public discussion. The incident reopened long-standing legal debates about passenger rights during traffic stops. Under U.S. law, drivers are required to provide identification and documentation when stopped for a traffic violation. Passengers, however, occupy a more complex legal position. Supreme Court precedents establish that officers may order passengers to exit a vehicle during a lawful traffic stop for safety reasons. However, the obligation of passengers to provide identification varies depending on state law and specific circumstances. In general, absent reasonable suspicion of a separate crime, passengers are not universally required to identify themselves. Maryland law does not explicitly require passengers to present identification during routine traffic stops unless additional legal thresholds are met. This creates a gray area in which officers may request identification but cannot always compel compliance without further justification. Officers often rely on discretionary authority and safety-based reasoning in these situations. Courts have historically granted law enforcement wide latitude during traffic stops, particularly when commands are framed as safety measures. This latitude, however, does not always align with public understanding of constitutional protections. The disconnect between what is legally permissible and what the public perceives as fair or reasonable plays a central role in cases like this. Actions may fall within legal boundaries while still generating controversy due to differing expectations of restraint and necessity. Public reaction to the video was immediate and divided. Online platforms filled with commentary, analysis, and reinterpretation of the footage. Some viewers focused on the passenger's refusal to comply, framing the arrest as a predictable outcome of non-compliance with police orders. Others focused on the initial request for identification, viewing the escalation as unnecessary and avoidable. Community response varied significantly depending on personal experience, political orientation, and prior beliefs about policing. The incident did not exist in isolation. It was interpreted through the lens of previous national cases involving traffic stops and police use of force. High-profile incidents from earlier years influenced how viewers categorized what they were seeing. For some, the footage fit an established pattern of overreach. For others, it reinforced the importance of compliance during police encounters. These prior reference points shaped conclusions before all facts were known. Confirmation bias played a substantial role. Viewers often interpreted ambiguous moments in ways that supported their existing beliefs. Short clips circulated more widely than full-length footage, reinforcing selective understanding. Once narratives solidified, they were rarely revised, even as additional information emerged. For Antoine Webbington, the arrest had immediate and longer-term consequences. Beyond the legal implications of the outstanding warrants, the incident resulted in sudden public exposure. His name, image, and actions became permanently searchable, detached from broader personal context. The driver also experienced lasting effects. Her role as the recorder placed her at the center of public discussion. Online scrutiny extended to her decisions during the stop, including filming and commentary. While not charged in connection with the incident, her involvement altered her privacy and public visibility. The officers involved continued their duties following the internal review. Although their actions were publicly defended by the department, their identities and conduct were widely discussed online. Even in the absence of disciplinary action, public attention created professional and personal pressure. Despite extensive discussion, many questions remained unanswered. Internal deliberations, officer perceptions in real time, and alternative outcomes were not fully disclosed. As public attention shifted to other events, coverage diminished. The case entered a phase common to viral incidents: widespread initial focus followed by prolonged silence. Video evidence played a central role in shaping perception, but it did not provide a complete account. The recording began after the stop was already underway, omitting initial observations, radio communications, and officer assessments made before approaching the vehicle. Body-worn cameras captured some additional angles, but even these did not include internal decision-making or conversations between officers outside microphone range. Communications with dispatch, prior knowledge checks, and supervisory input occurred beyond the view of the public. Systemic factors also influenced the encounter. Training protocols, departmental policies, and broader law enforcement culture shaped how officers interpreted resistance and authority. These factors operate in the background and are not visible in isolated footage. Video evidence offers clarity, but also imposes limits. It captures actions, not intentions. It records sound, not perception. While it provides accountability, it cannot fully reconstruct the complexity of real-time decision-making under uncertainty. This case continues to matter because it demonstrates how routine encounters can rapidly evolve into defining moments. A traffic stop initiated for speeding became a national point of discussion, not because of its rarity, but because of its familiarity. It illustrates how legal authority, individual rights, and discretionary judgment intersect in everyday settings. It shows how private individuals can become public symbols without consent, and how narratives form faster than institutional processes conclude. The tension between what the law allows and what the public expects remains unresolved. That tension exists not only in this case, but in countless similar encounters that never go viral. The footage ends, statements are issued, reviews are closed, but the broader question remains open. At what point does a lawful interaction become something else, and who ultimately decides?